All right, Alex Strouf is good enough to join us here on the Denton Day Show. Him and I go way back. You can hear him on ESPN Madison in the great state of Wisconsin, and follow him on Twitter at Alex_Strouf. Alex, what's going on, man? How are you?
What's up, dude? Unfortunately, yeah, we go way back, don't we? That's unfortunate for you. I think you've been putting up with me for what, like 5, 6, 7 years now. So appreciate you having me as always, dude. Always good to catch up. And excited to be a part of the new project, the Denton Day Show, which I've been enjoying on Spotify. So congrats on the new project, and excited to be with you, buddy.
Yeah, whenever people ask how we met, which doesn't happen often, but it does happen every now and then, I tell them we met on an app, which always gets some confusing looks from people. But I tell them it was a sports debating app, and some of them believe me and some of them don't.
Yeah, that's a great point. I guess I kind of forgot that existed. But it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that, though. I did see, and this is a complete side note. I saw somebody new we brought in as like a part-time producer in Milwaukee, our Milwaukee station, had interned for said app. So I need to reach out to them and be like,
Really?
"Hey, so and so, this is still around." So very interesting. I hadn't thought of it like I said, a couple of years, but that's the second time it's been brought to my attention this week. Can I say the name of it? Is that something I can do here?
Yeah, it's the Sports Me app. I don't even know if it still exists, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know if it does either, but Sports Me was the name of it, right? Like, we're talking about the same thing, I think.
Yeah. The owner of it, he and I were kind of cool, and then I realized he unfollowed me on most social media, so I guess we're not cool anymore.
I wonder if he did the same to me, because I also had that same thought. But interesting guy nonetheless.
Yeah, hey, it led to this, so I guess something good came out of it, if nothing
else. It's a win.
So you were talking some Bucks yesterday on ESPN Madison in the wonderfully titled Bucks at 6, which is of course a play on Bucks in 6 in the NBA Finals. We're one game into the postseason right now. They squeaked one out against Chicago. What was your biggest takeaway from Game 1 as we now get set to head into Game 2 tonight?
What's the shitty saying? Survive in advance, right? Like, or a win's a win, and that's kind of what it was on Sunday, right? So let me throw it. This is a stat I've been fascinated with all week. Let me throw this at you, and I want to get your genuine reaction. Under Coach Mike Budenholzer, the Bucks are now 4-6 in Game 1s. Kind of a weird stat, right? Like,
it's a weird stat.
They're less than 500 in Game 1s. If the Bulls would have pulled that off, they would have been 3-7 under Bud in Game 1. So it's just like they usually aren't very good in Game 1s, and the way that game operated, it was almost backwards, right? Like, they had the electric first quarter, and then it seemed like the rust set in from the 5-day layoff, second, third, and fourth quarter, where usually it's the reverse. So It was just an odd game, but they survived. They won ugly, and a win's a win. Look, Chicago has given Milwaukee no issues in the last couple of years. I think I don't want to misquote, but I think it's 16 or 17-1 in the last 17 or 18 games, Milwaukee over Chicago. So it's been pretty much pure domination for the last few years. And I expect more of the same. I think the rust is knocked off now for Milwaukee. You get Game 2 when we're recording tonight at Fiserv Forum, and we'll see how it rolls on from there. But if I had to take a guess right now, I'm thinking the series doesn't go any longer than 5 games.
Now, you mentioned that stat about Coach Bud. Oftentimes I feel like we get a lot of like those, because that's a really interesting stat, right? Like, that's kind of it puts it in perspective. Oftentimes I feel like we get those stats after something happens. Was that like a stat that you guys were aware of beforehand, that he had struggled in Game 1s, or is it one of those things that comes after and be like, I never really realized that?
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize it. Like, I was semi-aware of it. I'm going to sound like an idiot right now, aren't I? I was semi-aware of it, but I wasn't aware of it right now. Like, I knew that there was some struggles in Game 1s because I thought of bubble season 2020.
Right.
Lost Game 1 to the freaking Orlando Magic in the bubble. And like that's kind of why I remember it. And then last year against the Hawks, against the Suns, Game 1 losses, Game 2 losses in both of those senses as well. So yeah, it's something I was like semi-aware of, but I didn't realize what the actual numbers behind it was. So 4-6 now, and it's just something I'll keep an eye on the rest of the postseason, because I assume the Bucks have at least 1 or 2 more series, if not 3 more series left in them. So it's just something odd to keep it. I don't know that it means anything, right? Like, it's 1 game. So I don't know that it actually means anything, but I do find it fascinating. I don't know. Judge me.
Giannis once again has found himself in the MVP conversation. How has he gotten better this year? Because he's dominated this conversation for what, like the past 3-4 years. He's always been in it. How has he gotten better this year?
Good question. The jump shooting's better, and I think that's something you and I have talked about. It's not like he's Steph Curry, but like it's got better, and that would answer your question. So I don't know. I think he's always had the ability to play all 5 positions. I think it's just more sharp this year, right? Like he's run the point more comfortably. He can play a little bit more center comfortably and match up with guys like Joel Embiid, which again, he could always do. It just seems like he's a little bit sharper. And, it's funny he's in the MVP conversation now because I think he's better this year than the years he won the MVP. Don't get me wrong. I'm not discrediting those seasons, but Giannis is clearly still developing as a superstar, which is scary for the rest of the NBA because he is getting better, to your point, right? Like we can go ahead and fine tune what he got better at, but I would say his all-around game is just sharper. And I keep talking about this moment because I'm sure you probably, as a huge basketball fan yourself, didn't have a similar reaction to me on Sunday when Giannis did something I'd never seen. And you don't get to say that very often with 2-time MVPs, Defensive Player of the Years, Finals MVPs, right? Guys that have done it all.
Yeah.
You don't often get to look at them and say, I've never seen something like that. And that was where he kind of drove the lane in the first half, was triple covered outside the lane, and then realized he didn't have an outlet pass. So he threw it off the backboard and then dunked it. He threw himself a self alley-oop while triple covered. It's just like, how do you do that? Like I would break several bones if I even attempted that. So he's just fascinating to me. But nonetheless, yeah, he's gotten better. I really think all around, like I said, the jump shooting is the one area where you're like, okay, I'd like to see you take that next step. Last year was free throws, right? Like in the finals in that game 6, he went 16-17 or whatever it was. So it was like, okay, no issues there. And that's something that's kind of taken a backslide. So you hope he can pick back up here in the postseason. I think he shot just under or just over 50% on Sunday in game 1. So that's something you'd like to see improve. But overall, I really think he's playing the best basketball of his career.
I know this next question is weird because I don't really know how you measure a guy's hunger, but I feel like oftentimes once they reach the top of the mountain, they kind of take their foot off the pedal a little bit. Does it feel like Giannis has pushed the pedal down further after winning the championship last year to prove that this is something he's going to be about for the next, 5, 10, 15 plus years in the league?
It's a really good question. I don't know that he's pushed it down further by any means, but I don't think his foot's come off the gas at all since winning last year's title, if that makes sense, right? Like I still view him very, very hungry, to your point. Like I still view him as a superstar with an absolutely huge chip on his shoulder, wanting to go out, prove everybody wrong, and do it again, right? Like the intro to our show, Bucks at 6 on ESPN Wisconsin, is it's not about doing it once. It's about proving you can do it again. And I kind of view that as Giannis's mentality here in this playoffs, right? Like nobody gives a damn. You won it last year. Now it's over with. Now this is the repeat. This is the title defense. Go and defend it. And I think this is a team that's been nationally disrespected, at least to some degree this year, right? Like there's been a lot of attention for the Phoenix Suns. There's, of course, a lot of attention for the Golden State Warriors. There's a lot of attention for the Boston Celtics. Like there are some teams that are getting more attention than the defending champion Bucks. And I think Giannis does pay attention to that, at least in some degree. So, yeah, I view him as still incredibly hungry for the level of superstar he is and all the things he's accomplished. I still think the foot is very heavy on the gas, to use your very nice analogy, Denton.
So we'll segue a little bit off of the Bucks to more of you. You hosted Bucks at 6 on ESPN Wisconsin, and what are you, like 22, 23 years old, right? Hosting on an ESPN network. Walk me through this journey of how this came to be. Like, what was your first reaction? Like, do you allow yourself to sit back and realize, like, it is pretty ridiculous that I'm in my early 20s hosting on an ESPN platform?
Yeah, so I'm 23 to answer your question. I'm fresh out of college. I graduated, I guess, almost a year ago now. It's April. So, yeah, last May is when I graduated. So I've been with ESPN Wisconsin for just about a year full time, a little bit over a year. I've worked there a little bit in college. How did this come to be? I don't know. I've really always known this is what I wanted to do, right? Like, and I think that's kind of how you and I connected. Is I think you were fresh out of college, or maybe even still in college. I was fresh into college. I think as a freshman in college when you and I connected for the first time. So like I always wanted to do something, right? Whether that be sports media, whether that be sports writing or sports hosting. And I just fell in love with radio in college. Like that was just the avenue I loved. I fell in love with talk radio. When I was doing homework, like I would listen to like 94 WIP out of Philadelphia or WFAN in New York, or I don't know, 98.5 in Houston. Like I just listened to all these huge stations just to kind of understand what the guys at the top of their game are doing, so I can try to apply that. So Bucks at Six, we just launched it this week. This is the second season we've done it. First season I've done it though, as the lead host. It's on both 94.5 ESPN in Milwaukee, which is awesome, and then 100.5 ESPN in Madison, which is the station I primarily work in, as I'm based in Madison. So yeah, it's really cool. Like there is moments where I do have to stop and smell the roses a little bit, because the other show I host is for Wisconsin football, University of Wisconsin football. It's not on the network broadcast, but we do our own across, again, ESPN Wisconsin pre and post game show. And I'm working with a guy named Monte Ball, who you may or may not remember. He's finalist for the Heisman Trophy. And I think it was 2011, 2012 ish. Played a few years with the Denver Broncos and Peyton Manning during his era there. And so like, that was kind of a pinch me moment, right? Cause that's like a dude I grew up watching, excuse me. Right. And now I'm co-hosting a radio show with him. So it's really neat. I don't take it for granted. I absolutely love my gig and love my job. And, I'm lucky because I look forward to going to work every day. And that's something I really don't take for granted, because it just energizes me. And if I wasn't in a job that energized me, I'd be miserable. Like I wouldn't be happy. So I'm really happy with where I'm at, dude. I appreciate you asking that.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because I remember, you started writing, right? You were writing for the Oklahoma City Thunder with SB Nation. How did that contact come to be? Did you reach out to them? Did they find you? Like, how did you build that relationship to start?
Hell of a memory, Denton. I'm impressed. I even kind of forgot about that. Welcome to loudcity.com. That was the name of the website. That was my first ever gig. I was 13 years old. I think, what would that make me? 8th grade, I think I was in. I wasn't even in high school.
8th or 9th grade, yeah.
I was just sitting in my mom's basement writing about the NBA playoffs because I liked the Thunder at the time. I don't know. That's how I got going. That I parlayed that into writing fantasy football for SB Nation because they needed a guy there. The summer going into my freshman year. Parlayed that into starting my own website called All Wisconsin Athletics, which got me credentialed at some area stuff. Nothing like major, but like single A baseball and a smaller D1 UW Green Bay, like covering basketball there. And then parlayed that into working for a couple weekly newspapers in the Green Bay area covering high school sports. And then I went to college and I was like, okay, what's next? And I worked at the student radio station at UW Stevens Point. All 4 years I was there. And then was able to land a spot, obviously, with Good Karma Brands and ESPN Madison while my last semester of school. And then they were nice enough to offer me a full-time gig after I graduated. So that's kind of the long story short of my path. But yeah, writing about Oklahoma City Thunder for SB Nation. I'm really impressed with your memory on that. Did you cheat? Did you go on LinkedIn or something?
Well, I did go on LinkedIn, but I had known that because when we first met, you talked, you were still fresh in the Thunder. And that was like right around the time Kevin Durant left and Russ was playing well. So,
wow.
The Thunder was kind of
at the known each other for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. There you go.
But when you're writing at that age, because I'm sure now you look back, if you do look back at some of the writing, and it was the best you could do then. But like when you're 13, you don't know the basics of writing big time sports writing. What was kind of your process of either figuring out topics or making sure the writing flowed? Because I remember I used to write when I was 13 too, and it was absolute trash on my end. It was terrible.
Yeah, mine couldn't have been any good either. I forgot exactly what I did. I had specialty assignments, so like it was kind of carved out for me what I would. I think I did a weekly column almost at 13, which is just hilarious. 10 years. Called Full Court Report. I think is what it was called. My mom, like I said, this is 10 years ago, so hang with me. I think I covered like the week that was in OKC basketball. So if they had 3 games, I'd kind of do like my takeaways from that. Right. And maybe my takeaway on Tabo Shefalosha's defense. That's a name you haven't heard in a while. Yeah. So that was how it started. And then I don't know. I don't know what my process was, frankly. I think I just wanted to do it. So I just did it. And then from there, I actually understood the fundamentals of writing a good article, and
Mhm.
whether that be an opinionated piece or a feature or whatever. And then once I got into newspapers, I actually learned what the hell I was doing. And I had some great people, along the way to teach me kind of how to be a good writer, which I was super appreciative for, because I was totally able to bullshit my college classes when I knew how to be a good writer, right? Like
Yeah.
I got into school and I started taking like 300 level writing journalism classes, but I'd already done it. So like I
Mhm.
wasn't learning a lot of new things, and that might sound cocky, but like that's true. It wasn't
Yeah.
very hard for me, and I went to a pretty small university, right? Like I didn't go to Liberty like you did, where I imagine there was a lot more kids in a journalism class than there was at UWSP for me. So yeah, so I don't know. I don't even remember what your question was. My process as a 13-year-old, I don't fucking know. Like
Did you have did your high school have a newspaper course?
I think they did, but I wasn't a part of it. So
Yeah.
I worked for, and that made me sound big time, which I wasn't. I never got into it. I think it like launched my sophomore year, so I think I kind
Mhm.
of did it. Because my sophomore year is when I started working for the weekly paper in town where I went to high school, little town
Yeah.
just in Wisconsin. And they gave me full trust. The newspaper, they were like, we don't have a sports guy. You're in touch. You know what you're talking about. You know the athletes are in school. Write 3 articles a week. We'll pay you whatever it was, $150 a week. Go crazy. I was like, yeah, that's actually not bad for a high school kid, whatever. And like I'm interviewing my friends, which is
Mhm.
the fun part. So yeah, it was super interesting. But yeah, I think I missed when the school paper launched, and I was already working. Like it wasn't like I had no interest in it. I think I just kind of missed how it worked. But I kind of paved my own way in a sense, which is something I'm really proud of now that I can actually look back at in a full-time job in media and smile at the hard work that paid off.
Do you ever do you miss writing at all nowadays?
Yeah, I do. I really do. I have no freaking time for it, but I
Right.
do miss it. Because there's a totally different creative process that goes into writing than hosting a radio show, as probably better than anybody, right? Like
Mhm.
there are things I can write that I can execute on the radio, especially like questions and interviewing. And I think that's something you and I both take a lot of pride in is our interviewing skills and the ability to have a really natural conversation with our guests. So there's like writing that goes into that, but not to the level of features and telling other people's stories, which I do miss that aspect of it a lot. Writing features, I think, would be the big one. Just like a high school athlete that overcame some sort of triumph to do something really cool. Like I always enjoyed those stories. I still enjoy reading them because I still cover a little bit of high school sports in the Madison area now. Anchoring our Prep Mania coverage for high school football and high school basketball. So I'm
Right.
still a little bit in the loop, but I'm not writing anymore. So yeah, I do miss it, but I wish I had more time because maybe I'd do it then.
When you first stepped into a radio studio when you were in college, do you remember, was there the kind of this feeling like almost maybe not a sigh of relief, but like feeling at home, like, all right,
Yeah,
I'm validated in all of the steps to get here? Because how many times do we see people start really young and then burn out, it doesn't work, and then they're like, I'm not trying to take shots at nobody, but they're like selling insurance or cars or what have
right.
you. When you sit in that studio for the first time in front of a microphone, did you feel at home?
Yeah, I did, and that's funny. The way you put it is really funny. So, ironically enough, this weekend I'm going to Illinois for a bachelor party for
Hey.
for the guy that first invited me into the radio studio in college, which is just ironic. We're talking today. He was the sports director at 90 FM, and he hosted a weekly show called Sports Beat, which I eventually ended up hosting for all 4 years I was in school. He brought me in. It was October of 2017. I can tell you, I remember like it was 5 years ago. I know exactly what it was. And I got in there, I sat down, and Nathan is the name of this guy. And we kind of just riffed on the Packers for an hour. I was like, I actually didn't do half bad, and I didn't look at any notes. Oh, okay, maybe I can do
Right.
this. I've done podcasts, I've done some other shit, but like this is different. This is live radio. It was fun. Let's do it again next week. We kept doing it on a weekly basis, and then I got involved in student TV, and I went in there and I recorded with some guys I'd never met, and I was like, damn, I'm actually good at this compared to those. Like, right, I actually have some personality that's coming through. What's going on here? And so then I just realized, all right, maybe I'm not half bad at this. And then I started linking up with people in the business and having them review, whether that be my demo or whatever. And I was getting positive feedback. I wasn't getting shredded. There was the feedback of, which is still a problem with me. I talk too fast. But
don't we all? Yeah.
But like another one was like, I'm too enthusiastic. And I was like, that's not fake though. Like, yeah, that's not fake. A guy very high up, and maybe when we're done recording, has told me that on more than one occasion. I'll tell you that after we're done recording. But like I've gotten weird feedback, but it's like, that's just me, and that's not going to change. Like, that's just how that goes. So, I think, what's the saying? It takes 10,000 hours to be really good at something. Right. I've got to be close. And I think I'm finally to a point in radio, at least talk radio, where I'm happy with what I'm presenting. Like, I'm natural. Like, I'm just me now. And I don't know that I was always that in college, but that's why you do it in college, right? Like, you get the reps in. And I'm to a point where I feel like I'm just me on the air. I'm not trying to impress anybody. I'm not trying to be something I'm not, which I'm sure I fell victim to at some point, right? Like, I think we all do as early broadcast. But I think I'm to a point where I don't have to fool anybody. And that makes me really happy that I'm just being me. I'm just being a goofball with a microphone. And that's again, something I'm really proud of.
As a guy that does live radio, you've done live radio for years, you also have experience with the podcasting. What's the biggest difference in the two of them? And do you have one in which you prefer doing?
Holy crap, then. Remember
when it feels like the reason I asked that is because it almost feels like, I mean, I don't know if this happens to you, but when I was doing Sports Map on the daily, people would always ask how my podcast was. I'm like, it's not a podcast, it's radio. Yeah. Like, there's a difference between the two.
Yeah, people still ask me that, and I still have the patience to be like, dude, I do radio, but and get my show on podcast. Right. But like, yeah. So okay, so I just want to make sure I'm getting your question right. What's the difference? What's the biggest difference? And how I view it, right?
Right.
I think there's something I've shared on Facebook every year. It's popped in my memories. Jody Arvigan, he hosts ESPN's 30 for 30 podcast. Mm-hmm. He tweeted, it was several years ago now, there should be a podcast that when news breaks, it's live and happening, and you can tune right in to hear live reaction. And somebody quote tweeted it and said, "You're thinking of fucking radio, dumbass." Hello. So like, that's the difference to me, right? Like, radio is something unique that will never be beaten by a podcast. And that is live, connecting right now, right? Like, I'm driving in the car. What I'm listening to is happening in a radio studio this very second. Whereas podcasts, and this is a knock on them, because I think podcasts have their way too, is I think there's just more production that can go into it if you need to. And a lot of cases you don't need to. If it's just a conversation like you and I are having, that's okay. But I don't know. They both serve a different purpose. But radio has that one unique factor of being live that will just never be beaten. It just can't be. And that's why I love it. It's so unique, right? Like, we are doing this together right now, and you can call in and get in this conversation right now, or you can text in and maybe change the direction of the conversation, with whatever you're thinking. So that would be the biggest difference. But podcasts are so unique too, especially when you get into the audio versus video conversation as well. Like, there's so much there to unpack, but I love radio. I always will. I love the live aspect. It's just so neat to me.
What is or who, I should say, we'll start when you were in college, who was the first guest that you booked where you were like, all right, I feel good about this guy. Like, this is maybe not like an NBA player per se, but like a notable name in the field where it felt good.
Brian Anderson, voice of the Milwaukee Brewers, and obviously does a ton with Turner Sports in the NBA playoffs. I had launched a podcast, which you were actually a guest on right when quarantine started, right when the pandemic started. Yeah. I did 5 episodes only before we pivoted to a live show.
Yeah.
Called Run It Back, I think it was called. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, I think it was Run It Back. I'm still subscribed to the feed, so I think it was Run It Back.
Yeah, okay. And I think you were guest 2, and Brian Anderson was guest 3.
Hey.
So, you set the precedent really well. But, having him on it, he gave me like 50 minutes because first off, he was just way too nice. But second off, nobody had anything to do. It was, we were literally told to stay in our houses. So me and Brian,
that or Tiger King. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So me and Brian Anderson caught up for like 50 minutes and he treated me like a normal dude. He didn't treat me like he was one of the best broadcasters in the world at this point. And, I appreciated the hell out of that. So that's when I was like, okay. And, I didn't shit my pants. So like, it was like, okay, we had a normal conversation. I didn't get starstruck. I just talked to him like he was a normal dude. And I thought it was a really good interview. So I would say that one really stuck out to me when I was in college. I'm trying to think of some other ones because there were some fun ones, that happened. Who else? I think Antoine Jameson. I flew to North Carolina to interview Antoine Jameson, the 1998 National Player of the Year.
Yeah.
He had a basketball camp at Chapel Hill. So I flew out there and interviewed him for it. And when I was like a sophomore in college, because I was co-hosting a podcast called The Bandwagon at the time with my buddy Victor Hensley. And he was a UNC student, so I had somewhere to crash. But we made just like a couple bucks from advertising dollars through our podcast throughout the couple of years we did it. I spent it all on a plane ticket, and then I added extra onto it just to go interview Antoine Jameson. So that was a fun one. So yeah, I guess those would be the first two that come to mind.
Where did your love for trivia start from?
That's funny. So great question. I've always liked trivia. It's always fascinated me. But then, the student station at Stevens Point has run the world's largest trivia contest for, this was the 52nd year. And, the same guy's been writing it for the last 43, Jim the Oz Oliva. You call him the Oz, but his name's Jim Oliva. Fascinating dude. Writes. So it's how this contest works. It starts Friday at 6 p.m. It ends Sunday night at midnight. 54 hours straight, 8 questions an hour. And so the question is read twice. A song will play on the radio. These questions are read over the radio. So the question's read twice. A song will play. They will read the question a third time. A second song will play, and then your time's up once that song ends. And you have to call a phone bank at the station, which 18 phone operators are answering. So it is just chaos. It's pure chaos. It's amazing. And so I guess, so my love for trivia had always existed because like growing up, I played trivia crack. I played, name all the trivia games. I've probably played them. I still do. I play like trivia crack for money still because I love gambling. So the world's largest trivia contest is something I've been lucky enough to be involved with the last couple of years. And it's just really unique. It's really special. It's the biggest event in Stevens Point, Wisconsin every year. And this was the last year of the aforementioned Oz, as he'll be stepping away following this year. So I'm interested to see what the next step of the contest is. But I think that's what you were referring to.
Yeah, when you're doing that for 54 straight, like that's a long time. That's a really long time. How are you guys celebrating after? Are you just going and sleeping? Are you guys celebrating in a bar with soft drinks, but celebrating in a bar? Like what's the celebration process like?
No, so the contest gets done because after the last question of midnight on Sunday night, they then read the results from last place to first place. And this year, I think there was 350 teams. So that takes 2 hours. Excuse me, I'm coming off the COVID. So this year it was like 2:30, and then you celebrate at somebody's house until I think I finally went to bed about 7:30 a.m. on Monday. And I didn't sleep a whole lot that weekend, as I mentioned, but I think it's you celebrate accordingly with everybody that put in the hard work throughout the weekend and party till the AM. That's the first time I've done that since I graduated college, by the way. So I still got it.
So just a few more for you here. Now you're doing radio at ESPN Madison, and you'll host some, but you're mostly in a production role at the moment. What's the biggest challenge? And sometimes challenge is a bad word, but I think it can be parlayed into something fun. What's the biggest challenge of that daily live radio grind that you've been doing now for the better part of a year?
Good question. I think it's just like not losing motivation and not letting things slip through the cracks, right? Like very openly, I've got a lot of responsibilities, which I think is a good thing. That means they trust me. Um, and so it's just a matter of making sure I'm not missing anything, right? Like, that's kind of a boring answer, but like, I do a lot of back end work that, if I sat here and explained it, you'd be bored as shit. So I'm not going to, but I could swear here, right? I think I've said shit like 8 times. Okay, we're okay. Good. So yeah, I don't know. Just making sure things don't slip and making sure, I referenced it earlier. Like, I need stuff that energizes me. So it's also setting myself up for success by finding ways to do things that are energizing and fun and things that give me, passion and energy and whatever else. So it's on me to make sure I don't get bored with it either. So, and I haven't yet. And I hope I never do, because like I said earlier, I love it. So, yeah, I think those are the biggest challenges. Is that a good answer? Fair answer?
No, yeah, definitely. And the final question for you here, I asked this of most of my guests. I don't know if you're like a super goal oriented, like this is what I want to do 5 years from now kind of guy, but what do you see as being the next step? I mean, you're involved with this show. Do you see that taking on a role where you are really in the show now and you're stopping some of the production work to be a host in the near future? Or where do you see yourself at coming up here?
Yeah, the goal is the goal, and it has been since I've started. I've told all my teammates at GKB, this is my goal is to be a daily host, and I'm really close to that. Producing Rutledge and Hamilton every day. I'm essentially the third co-host. My name's just not on the marquee, right? So like I'm and then with Bucks at 6 as well for the next couple months, as long as the Bucks are alive, I'm doing it every day. So I'm doing some of the stuff I wanted to do, which which makes me really happy and keeps me happy, right? As a teammate. So I'd like to be doing daily talk radio because it's just something I've been in love with. It's something I've fallen even more in love with, working in it full time. I'm in a really unique market, right? Like Madison, Wisconsin, college town, also a great city, also the capital of the state of Wisconsin. So I'd love to do some daily talk radio down here in the future. I'm in no rush though. Like you said at the top, I'm 23. Like I've got to figure this out and learn the ropes and, sharpen my craft a little bit. So I'm in no rush, but that's the ultimate goal. Yeah, to answer your question.
Alex, it's always fun catching up, my friend. I appreciate you carving out some time after the COVID, healing up there. So I appreciate you carving out some time, man. It's been fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me back after I had to cancel our original date. I appreciate it. And what a chat this was. We really went deep here, man. I didn't think I was going to be doing so much self-reflection.
Oh, yeah. Trust me. The next time we're going to go even deeper. No breaks.
Good. I look forward to it. That's great.